Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.
Welcome back to Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host Aradia, daughter of your main host, T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about electricity again. Last week, we told the story of rural electrification in Broad. This week is how that process affected sewing machines specifically. We even get into some family history of what living through this was actually like. This episode's purpose is to tell the story of the Singer 101, a machine that was engineered perfectly, but in the wrong time and place. We start with our own family, who were not at the cutting edge of electrification, and who work as a case study for why the luxury item of the 101 would never take off with the average consumer, even before World War I took over the manufacturing demands of multiple nations. Once the industry recovered from the war effort, the gadgetification of sewing machines was underway, and elegant craftsmanship from a bygone era was no longer a valuable feature. But despite the awkward timing, the Singer 101 is a vital part of understanding the overall history of sewing machines. So, let's get into it. Okay, our first two-parter.
Yeah, this is part 2. We're talking about electricity.
Electricity.
Well, there's a song and it goes, electricity. We'll get to that. Anyway, we're talking about the 1930s, the Rural Electrification Administration under the Roosevelt administration, the Depression, blah, meow, etc. I just want to put in here a little bit of family history as it relates to this whole story. My mom was born in 1938 in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and many of her early memories are her mom sewing clothes on their Singer sewing machine, and it was a treadle. It was not electric. My mom has 5 siblings, which actually has 7, but there's 5 in that first husband group. You know how old families were. One husband died, okay, we get another one, we get more siblings. 5 siblings in that first group that are all very close in age. So Grandma's sewing a lot of clothes on her old Singer sewing machine. There were floods, there was a death, there was a lot of moving. Her life radically changed in the late 40s. I don't know what happened to her sewing after that, but my mom clearly remembers clothing literally made of the flour sacks. We've heard of this during the Depression.
Yeah.
Flour millers made pretty fabric for their flour sacks. Now, flour fabric has to be densely woven to keep the flour in anyway.
Of course, yeah.
And then to go ahead and print really nice things on it, it was a very dignified way of getting fabric to their fellow farmers, right? Because all the farm people are in this together. So my mom remembers that, her mom making clothing out of flour sacks on a treadle sewing machine in the early 1940s. So this is like, okay, so my grandma, by the time I met my grandma, I was 10, and she had moved too much. There was no sewing machine in her house. But her sister, my great aunt, I actually have a picture of my great aunt Ollie tending her wood stove. Behind her is a treadle Singer sewing machine. And on top of it are 3 guitar cases. That's my Aunt Ollie.
That is a genetic test better than DNA right there.
Oh, and you know what? She also had a really cool gap between her front teeth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit on the salty side. Yeah, I think Aunt Ollie was pretty closeted. She was like the original Indigo girl back then.
Sure.
But anyway, that picture of her, I gotta find that and maybe put it up on our site of her tending the wood stove with the sewing machine. And it was like 2 guitars in a banjo case, actually.
Of course.
This is a house I spent a lot of time in between age 10 and 15. I still remember the smell of it. They actually built the basement. We're talking Iowa here. Tornadoes. They built the basement out of cement blocks, and it's all tucked in to the dirt on the side of a bluff. If you've ever been to Council Bluffs, Iowa, it's very vertical. People build their houses tucked into the bluff because of storms, right? Then something financial happened and they couldn't finish the house. So they just lived in the basement, which is this tucked in underground thing. But here's this sewing machine in the room with the wood stove and the guitars. And I spent a little time in that room. And the smell of that wood stove and cement walls. And Aunt Ollie wasn't sewing at this time. So the machine did not have a belt. She was basically just using it to hold her guitars and banjos and things. So I would sit there by the wood stove and da-ting, 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 da-ting. On that sewing machine, I would make that wheel go around. This machine had never been electrified.
Wow, yeah.
My grandma's machine that my mom's clothes were sewn on also was never electrified. But I'm going to read a piece of stuff here. This is from the Sincere. This is from the most famous sewing machine book that you can't find nowadays. The Sincere Sewing Machine Service Manual. Published in 1970. Very small print. I mean, small publishing house. Like, not many of these books out there. If you find one, they're worth a lot of money on eBay. Anyway, I happen to have a clandestine PDF that came from Norway, circumventing meow. Anyway, Chapter 8. Now, this book was published in 1970. I want to also insert that here at U2S Sew, we are referring to cultural things from ages past, and their terminology was often very gendered, and I'm going to respect that when I'm reading from past sources. Chapter 8, Electrical Equipment. Most sewing machines sold in the United States during the past 20 years, published in 1970, so he's saying since 1950. Most sewing machines sold in the United States during the past 20 years have been electrified. With the advance of the REA, remember we talked about the REA in Part 1, Rural Electrification Administration, blah, 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 blah. With the advance of the REA into the farmlands of America, many housewives are able to enjoy electricity for the first time. The treadle sewing machine was either traded in for an electric or electrified. Okay, so what does that mean? The first electric sewing machine was marketed in the early 1920s. Manufacturers simply added a motor to an existing treadle head. In the late 1920s, they improved the machines by adding a smaller balance wheel, So basically we're talking about they're leading up to the 101. This is a self-published book. They're kind of sloppy here. But basically, in 1920, the Singer Company marketed the first sewing machine totally designed for electric operation. The Singer 101 featured a built-in motor and a top rotary hook. The underside of the machine was completely enclosed. Okay, whoa. This is a lot of new stuff on a sewing machine. It's designed for electricity. We're not just slapping on an aftermarket motor where the treadle used to be. Now, you've all seen these. There's a motor and there's a belt that connects to the sewing machine. This is like, okay, there's a belt, there's a motor, there's a hand wheel.
Sure, yeah.
In the old days, that belt went down to the big treadle wheel that you were pushing with your feet.
Right. It's a pretty easy transition,
right,
basically.
so you just, add a motor, now boof, you got an electric machine. No, you've got an electrified machine.
That's different.
Design for electricity is all different. Now, the Singer Model 101 was the first machine designed only for electricity. I'm going to go refer to another piece of information here. Somebody who's as much of a nerd as we are about sewing machines. This website is pungolivingHome.com. That's Pungo livinghome.com. 101, the Singer 101. Okay, design for electricity. This introduction is a little long, but there are many folks that have never heard of the Model 101. First manufactured in 1920. 101 was produced until 1937. Okay, what happened in 1937? The 201 came along. Everybody's heard about the 201. Actually, they overlap just a little bit as they start retooling. The 201 is like the mythic best sewing machine Singer ever made. It could never have existed without the 101. There had to be a beta.
So the 101 straight stitch, so the 201 could backstitch, like...
No, the electricity, the thing was designed for electricity. This means no external motor, no belt. This is the design difference. Whenever he says, oh, what's this sewing machine? The first thing I look at, if it's an old Singer, does it have a belt? Or does it have what's called a potted or pod motor? The Model 101 never really caught on with the market. The Model 101 failed to gain widespread popularity, and this was largely due to its innovations and to Singer's failure to recognize what the average sewing machine customer was looking for. The designers got ahead of what the customers, right? We've got the farm wife. Okay, this machine's designed for electricity. If you look at a 101, what you'll notice about it is there's no visible motor, there's no belt, and the hand wheel is tiny.
So it's like unnerving and unfamiliar?
The design is very strange. You're used to looking at this sewing machine, and if you look at an old sewing machine, you see that big old spoked hand wheel, right?
Yeah.
That's like part of it. If you draw, I'm going to draw an old-fashioned sewing machine. It's got that big spokey hand wheel, the curvy black body. The 101 hand wheel is tiny, maybe 3 inches across, where the other ones were 6 or 7. There's no spokes. It's solid. That's never been done. Never been done.
Okay, yeah. So it's weird. People don't know why it looks so different.
It looks modern.
Which is, in Singer's mind, a good thing, and in the consumer's mind is maybe a bit too fast.
Which consumer?
Right, the rural, conservative, slow-moving consumer.
Now we get to the part where Singer's failure to recognize what the average customer was looking for in a sewing machine, right? Keep in mind, in 1930, sewing machines were in high demand and considered a major purchase. Considering its price point, the expensive Model 101 was introduced into an already fiercely competitive market. Regardless of its innovations, the failure of the Model 101 to sell in larger numbers or gain wider acceptance is in no way attributed to the quality, capability, or any other mechanical or design fault. It is a very excellent machine. But not everybody had electricity. And even of the people that did have electricity, this was expensive stuff. This was the Tesla of sewing machines. Maybe that's a bad comparison, but
they did not have a Steve Jobs anticipating what people wanted to have in their houses.
Yeah. Between 1920 and 1937, when this machine was made, the consumer cost of the Model 101 was between $140 and $170, compared with the average income of the U.S. being at that time $3,300.
Ooh, yeah.
This machine was very expensive, and at that price point, it was more than twice the cost of any other Singer model offered at the time.
Yeah, that's a bad marketing move. I don't know marketing, but that's a bad move.
Add to this that Singer's competitors offered very high quality machines at less cost. They weren't designed specifically for electricity, but it's easy to see that the 101, this is the kicker, the 101 would always be a luxury purchase in a time that luxury could not be afforded.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Exactly. Beautifully engineered, aimed at top tier. When you look at the design of this machine, it's very slender. The light is built in. The motor is this just little circular thing at the back. You don't see a motor. You don't smell a motor. There's no sparks. It's art. Art Deco. It's like...
Yeah, you're selling me on this. I want one.
I have one. I just bought one last month from Mike. It needs some work, but I do have one, and I cannot wait. That's why I've been waiting to do this episode, because I'm just gushing on this machine right now. So it was expensive. And it was expensive. Another disadvantage of the 101 was the lack of electricity in the average American household. Again, we're talking 1920. The rural electrification didn't happen until the middle 1930s. This thing came out before that quite a bit. So there's no way this could even have gone to the country. It's strictly a city machine. Because it's so expensive, it's a city machine bought to put in the parlor and impress your husbands, wives, your social circle that comes over for tea. Oh, I've got the 101, the new all electric. And there it is in the parlor. It's not a treadle. You can see it's electric. And she has electric lights and an electric iron and maybe even a toaster.
A really modern woman.
So the 101 was sold to rich women to impress other rich women and to do a little sewing. But by the time it was at the end of its design lifespan, 1937 is when the housewives were just starting to get electricity in the home. So the 101 missed the farm.
I wonder how much that failure of the 101 helped factor into the argument for the REA. Being like, look, we've got products flopping because they're anticipating we've done more to make a grid.
I think it was more like they were making a niche product. The engineers were wanking it. They were just like over-engineering. They didn't
talk to their customers.
No, and they had a lot of great competition at the time. The Davis Sewing Machine Company, White, Weed, Wilcox and Gibbs. I mean, there were just so many good manufacturers. Stinger hadn't knocked them all out of line yet.
Gotcha.
But they were the first one to build the all-electric, designed only for electricity. So I said here, another advantage of the 101 was the lack of the electricity in the average American household. In the 20s and 30s, electricity in homes was pretty much confined to large cities. Smaller cities and towns had limited access to electricity, and rural areas even less. This was a problem for the 101 because it was the first Singer machine that depended on the use of an electric motor. While other machines could operate with a treadle belt or a hand crank and could be retrofitted with an external electric motor later, the Model 101 could not. It could only run with its electric motor. This further limited the number of people who could use the machine, even if they could afford it. Right? So It was definitely, like you said, a wrong place, wrong time. In the case also, to the end of the 101 here, but now that we all want one, there were only 250,000 made.
Wow.
When you're talking about rare bird singers, this is, if you're a collector, do you have a 101? Is it in operating condition? Because it was the first electric machine, it's got a very experimental motor. It's the first thing to fail.
Yeah.
Also, it's very unusual lubrication system, which I want to talk about right here. In the case of the 101, back to the article from PringleLivingHome.com, in the case of the 101, some of its innovation didn't turn out quite as well as Singer expected. Aside from its absolute reliance on electricity, One notable innovation of the 101 was a wick-style lubrication system to keep the sewing mechanisms under the bed lubricated. Okay, now that it's electric, it can go really fast. You can't depend on Mrs. Customer to put the right amount of oil in at the right? Oh, we're going to fix that. With one point of oiling instead of many, this is a great idea borrowed from industrial sewing machines and was intended to simplify maintenance. The wick system sits in a pan soaked with oil through a single hole in the top. And I've looked at the instruction manual. You put 12 drops of oil in this hole. And then there's this spidery wick system. There's like 8 little spider legs sticking out, and they each go to a different moving part. And so the oil goes into one part and goes out. And it just keeps going. And then there's a picture of it on here. While good in theory, again, the engineers were so enamored of this lovely thing they'd invented, it didn't do so well in practice. Why? The Model 101 is a full-size machine intended for use in a cabinet. Like most full-size sewing machines, especially those kept in a parlor just to impress your friends, right? It's not always up. It's folded down into a beautiful end table. When not in use, the machine is folded down. However, in doing so, all the oil drains out of the little pan.
No!
Oops. Singer's later editions of this machine enclosed an oil pan on the underside. Not all machines were fitted with it. This person goes on to gush about the machine. I just wanted to talk about the electric part, though. It was one of those things that, did you need an electric sewing machine? Well, no. Sewing machines had been around for 50, 60, 70 years, and they were operated by foot and hand crank just fine. However, we get into the gadgetification of American, okay, we get the Industrial Revolution, we're cranking out products, we need people to buy the product. What else can we buy? We need a new feature. Okay, we've got lights, we've got the iron, we've got the radio. Let's power up the sewing machine. So way before the Singer 101 came along, people were just hooking up little auxiliary motors to anything on the farm. Mixers,
Yeah, I was thinking
fans, all these things. Hey, let's put one on the sewing machine. So mounting a little motor in the cabinet and shortening that belt to go to the motor instead of, oh my gosh. And then we have a little rheostat controller, which if you're not into electricity, it's a little really simple device that just allows 0 to 6 settings on your speed, and you step on it or you push it with your knee and electricity goes in your machine. This is really old school. If you still got this, please unplug that when it's not being used. I have seen personally 3 house fires caused by that sort of sewing machine.
Eek!
So just unplug it. Put it in a power strip. Now we're going back to the Singer Sincere Sewing Manual from 1970. The 101 was invented 1920 to 1937. Then war smells started drifting over war stuff. War. Singer retooled for war after World War II. Before the sewing machine factories had retooled for wartime production. So there's a shortage of sewing machines. All the sewing machines were converted to making war stuff during the war.
Sure.
In England and the U.S.
The machines for making machines could be retooled.
Yes. So now the war's over, but we haven't get sewing machines going again. Sewing machines were a rare commodity. The housewife would pay any price for a sewing machine. Skilled repairmen bought old treadle machines, pre-electric, right? They're still in their old treadle stands. Repairmen bought old treadle machines, dismantled them, replaced or rebuilt old worn parts, bake painted the head. So all the decals are gone. You Singer fans will recognize the term Godzilla or wrinkle finish. White sewing machine, also White Company, also did this. A lot of companies did this crinkle finish, this bake finish. Late 1940s machines, all ought to have this. And black, green, brown, usually though. Sometimes a rusty color. So they bake painted the head, added a motor and a light.
Ooh, I do like a good light.
and a control with either a cabinet, so they put it back in your cabinet with a knee lever, or a portable case with a foot control. Now this machine's worth $150 and up. This is expensive, but there's a sewing machine. Thus, the conversion was born. Now, conversions are kind of rare to find nowadays, but when I first was doing sewing machines, a lot of them are getting traded in.
Really?
This is a post-war machine.
Okay.
Before things got retooled. And that terrible crinkle finish, and Singer would license that the machine was rebuilt by them, and they had a special decal that replaced the old decal. Now, I've got one of these machines.
Oh, really?
It's a Model 66, and it used to be a Lotus decal. And the reason I can tell is because the way the faceplate is imprinted. It's got the Lotus, not the scroll, not the ivy. It's got the Lotus faceplate and the Lotus back cover. But it's been Godzilla it's got Godzilla paint on it. And there's a few places where the Godzilla has worn off, and you can see the original finish underneath.
Wow.
What I don't understand is how they changed the serial numbers. Because the serial numbers have been restamped somehow for the later 1940s, early 50s. So more research is needed. Plus, the other thing you can tell about the machine, it still has a spoked hand wheel. A spoked hand wheel shows that it was a treadle or a hand crank. Even the 101 with its integrated hand wheel and no belt, machines with solid hand wheels, but they still had a belt, were still seen as more modern. Okay. So a solid, heavy hand wheel, oh yeah, you can use either or, but that heavy spoked hand wheel is really the best for treadling. Even now, if you want to convert a machine to treadle, you get the hand crank, or, you get that big wheel.
Yeah, bigger wheel than it came with.
Right. So the conversion happened until the late 1940s, and this is where we'll pick up a story at some point, with imported machines, with when Singer lost dominance. And this is when the imported European and Japanese machines, because of the way we rebuilt the Marshall Plan in Europe and rebuilding Japan, how they both got into sewing machines, and Singer did not innovate along with their competition. But let it be remembered that Singer brought us the first all-electric sewing machine. It took a while for other people to start building machines with motors integrated inside, which is what it is. No belt. The motor's in there. It's got gears. It's attached to the main drivetrain. There's no way you can run this on a treadle stand. People say, oh, can I run this machine on a treadle stand? Well, does it have an external hand wheel? Can you see a belt? Is the motor on the outside? Yes, you can. You might want to add some weight to that hand wheel.
Right.
Especially because I think I've talked about it in the vibrator, oscillator, full rotary episode. The more stuff you've got moving inside that machine, the more friction there is in how much effort it takes to move it. So if you want to do a full zigzag machine on a treadle, you better add a bunch of weight to the hand wheel. Otherwise, you're going to get quads of steel.
Right. So in my sewing room, I've got the Singer 1591. That one could easily be made to do treadle.
No,
it could not.
No.
But the Kenmore, okay, I was going to contrast it to the Kenmore, but no, the 1591
is
the
1591.
Like the definition of not. Okay.
The 1591 is one of the grandkids of the 101.
Okay.
If you look at your 1591, on the back, there is a pod motor. It's a little oblong. It's not round, but there's that oblong pod on the back.
Okay, yeah.
There's no belt.
Yeah, no, but it's black and has that profile. Surely that means it can be made into a treadle.
Well, a lot of people think that.
Okay.
The version of the 1591 that was for treadle was called the 15-88.
Okay.
Same mechanism, but there's no built-on motor. It has a big honking hand wheel.
Okay.
But yours, like the 101, has a pod motor, which has a gear drive, rack and pinion steering. It's got gears in there that convert that motor action right to the main shaft, and there's nothing to slip. There's no belt, there's no pulley, it's just gear drive. So after the 101 came the 201, and then the 1591, which was sort of a little brother of it, because it had the old-fashioned 15 mechanism, but the new modern gear drive electric motor.
Woo!
So that's what you've got.
Okay, gotcha. And the Kenmore would be similarly disinclined to get converted.
The Kenmore is kind of bizarre. It's got a motor inside, but it's not direct drive.
Really?
It's got cleated belts that reach from the motor up to the drive shaft and run on nylon gears.
Ah, because it is from that much later.
From that much later that there's a lot of pot metal and nylon in there. And it's also, that's the thing between belt drive, like complete gears, like the featherweight. Okay, well, there's all these gears inside, but it's still a belt drive machine. The 201, the 1591, the 101, the complete gear drive. There's nothing that can slip. There is treadle versions of all those. The 201's thing. No, there's not a treadle version of the 101. Again, back to the 101. It's a complete odd bird, only $250,000 ever made. I happen to be in possession of one right now. It's not complete. The light mechanism's gone. The motor needs to be reinstalled. It doesn't have a slide plate. But everybody needs a silly project, right? All right, well, that's enough about electricity and early sewing machines. We'll probably talk about that more later when we talk about rewiring sewing machines and how they can be dangerous if you don't know what you're looking at, specifically electrically dangerous, because we do want you to buy vintage sewing machines, but we do want you to be safe about it, tell you what to look for and how to fix any problems that you might find. However, due diligence, meow blah, it's not my fault if you blow yourself up. Brought to you by your local electric lineman. When your power goes off and it comes back on, make sure you give those guys a big honk and wave. They're working for you. Stay threaded!
Electricity.
And thus concludes our first two-part episode, consisting mostly of a selection of readings about the history of electricity intersecting with the history of sewing machines. We covered what average versus wealthy customers wanted in the early days of electric machines, how Singer missed the window of opportunity with the 101, the birth of the conversion machines, and teased a few future episode ideas that I did write down in my podcasting notebook during editing. You even got to hear about my sewing machines in a bit more detail. I was very interested in this episode to learn about how World War II affected the world of sewing machines. It's a topic we've touched on before and will certainly return to again in the future, but I always find it interesting. The way that pre-electric machines were able to fill the gap in a way that the overly modern machines could not feels like an example of irony, but if you think about how planned obsolescence has happened, it feels a little more predictable. We actually have an episode in the pipeline that will delve into this sort of realm of topics in a bit more detail. That's coming out in a few more weeks, so stay tuned for that. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine, who do repairs and restorations. You can follow us and Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine on Facebook and Instagram, and you can support us by sharing the podcast with your friends, and also with money, at patreon.com/used2sew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.